Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dayton Sports Huddle, The Dish. We're here at Submarine House in Centerville. You can hear it's bustling with activity and people settling in for dinner. And we're here to talk some more sports. I'm here with my co-host, Richie Moody, and we're here with our guest today, Coach Craig Turner, who has a storied career in high school football and as an assistant coach with the UD Flyers. And Richie, I know you have your personal experience with Coach Turner dating back to high school.
Yeah, that's correct. I played for Coach Turner at his first head coaching job at Brookville High School, where basically we had turned the Brookville program around from, a program that was kind of fluttering to, back-to-back playoff appearances and a lot of great stories. And, one of the, they say sports really shapes who you become as a man and as an adult. And Craig was definitely very instrumental in my own personal life, which is so many life lessons, but also just showing and, teaching and coaching and everything you can expect out of a mentor.
Yeah, I know we were talking about the many stories from high school and college, and I know we have a lot to get to, but what we find fascinating, I know we were talking about tell us about when you were a freshman coach at Trotwood Madison, I guess it was the early 80s, and tell us about the 3 or 4 players that were pretty monumental that you had on that team.
Right, well we were, it was in the early 70s, and I started out as a 7th grade coach, then the 8th grade, and then I was a freshman coach for 4 years. And one of the freshman teams that I had, we only had 17 players, but on that 17 players, we had 3 kids that eventually ended up in the NFL, Keith Byers, Maurice Douglas, and Dwight Sistrom. So that was probably a year that I was a fantastic coach.
Did you ever lose?
We did not lose that year, no. We did not lose.
If you would have lost, though.
I could have been a pretty poor coach if we'd have lost with those 3 kids on that team, yeah.
You just handed the ball off to Keith Byers.
Handed it off, and then when we wanted to throw the ball, we put him at tight end, we'd throw the ball to him, and then we had Maurice and Dwight on defense, so it was pretty good.
Yeah, and then after you coached freshmen, you actually coached with someone else that I remember when we first went to our first camp together at Brookville, Ed Domsites. Coached with Ed at Trotwood, and you guys won a state championship, correct?
Well, Ed was a lifelong friend, and we did coach together at Trotwood. I became an assistant coach after those 5 years, and then Ed left the year before we went to the state championship. Okay. He went to Alter. And so we did appear in the state championship. We lost that game. But I've coached a long time at several different places with Coach Domsites. We're very close.
Yeah, so you stuck around at Trotwood for a few years, and then Ed moved on to Alter. When did you move to Alter, and then how was that experience at Alter?
I stuck on with Trotwood one more year after the state championship, and then or the state runner-up game, and then I went to Alter with Ed. I was still teaching at Brookville at the time and coaching at Alter with Ed.
Yeah, I remember when you first got hired, the enthusiasm from the community, but also I remember a lot of, getting the fundraisers for the weight room. But one of the most memorable things that I remember was the first time we went to Alter's football camp. And I'm sure you remember the Les Cameron story, and we did a lot of inner squatting against Alter without pads on because you had preseason camps where you just had your helmet, and we're down there, and I'll let him tell the story, but it was. From a kid's standpoint, though, what a great privilege to go down and be with a program, because Alter had, Jeff Graham at the time, and they, TJ Polk. I mean, they had plethora of talent. Playoff run after playoff run, and a lot of that was due to Ed Domsites. But going down there was a lot of fun and a great experience.
We did, I was with Jeff. I was Jeff Graham's position coach at Alter, and TJ Polking, and you started to name. They had some great players. So I thought the best thing that we could do is go down and have a camp experience with them. It was supposed to be a non-contact camp, and the coaches saw it that way, but the players didn't see it that way, and it became pretty physical and got pretty aggressive, and it was a really good start for our Brookville program and a great experience.
I mean, I look back, and from a coaching standpoint, And I remember a lot of conversations at that time challenging young, especially a Brookville program that, was kind of floundering and struggling a little bit. And I remember a lot of those conversations, and I'm sure at every level that you've coached, even at UD, you've had to have similar conversations.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. You want to go and you want to expose your kids to the best competition you can. You have expectations of them being aggressive and improving their game. And I felt like at that time, for us at Brookville, brand new there, let's go to one of the best places and have camp with them and see how we progress.
Sure. What was that was obviously your first head coaching job. What was your expectations of your first year and from the standpoint of players, coaching, the community? How did that mix for you?
It's really funny. When I got hired, the superintendent told me that hey, if you can win 3 games your first year and then maybe 5 the next year and that kind of thing. And I'll be honest with you, Richie, and you know this because you guys have probably coached yourselves. Any good coach puts a tremendous amount of pressure on himself. It's not so much about what comes from outside, it's what comes from inside. So I put a lot of pressure on myself. Winning 3 games wasn't going to get it for me. If that was the case, I'd have got out a long time ago. But I ran into a group of kids that bought into the things that I was talking about, and it just took off. And I had great players like you.
Well, besides the great players, though, someone had to put systems together offensively and defensively. And, I know every coach struggles with different things. And, looking back at the career, I remember you telling me one time, and I don't remember what year it was, that you wish you would have enjoyed it more. Because we did have not only great athletes, but I even look back and I think to myself, being a coach now of my daughter's basketball teams and then coaching kids in baseball, I wish I would enjoy it more as well.
It's the curse of being a coach. If you take a lot of pride in it, it isn't enjoyable until the season is done. And then you get to enjoy it for a short time, and then it's time to start on the next season. And even like at UD, you walk off the field, you just won a game, and you enjoy it until the evening. And then in Saturday evening, you're starting on the film, and you're grading, and you're looking at all the things that went wrong. And you, as a coach, you tend to look at that and not the good things, and you're right back in it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to it than people understand. It's like any job. I don't know what your job is like or their job's like, but it is a grueling, grinding process. It's a lot of hours and long hours. And if you take a lot of pride in what you're doing, it's only fun for a brief time until you're on to the next game.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we obviously started Dayton Sports Huddle, the dish, is to tell the stories of people with long track records in high school, college, and or pro sports. I mean, the Dayton area is so rich with high school sports tradition, and you're talking about your background as an assistant with Trotwood and Alter, and then building up Brookville's program. And I guess you went from Brookville and you built Brookville into a perennial state contender or playoff contender, and then your path took you to Arcanum.
Well, I was at Brookville, and I got to a point there where I felt like, okay, I needed to try something else, and I thought maybe I had enough of being a head coach, and so I briefly went to Northmont with Coach Domsites again, and was an assistant there. And my wife, to be honest, realized right away, this is not for you. You need to become a head coach again. So I hooked on with Arcanum and had 4 years there and enjoyed that. It was a good program, and we had success there. And then that's when Coach Kelly recruited Brookville, Coach Kelly recruited Arcanum, and Coach Chamberlain recruits this area, the head coach. And I said to him, I'm kind of interested in what you're doing. And he said, well, when you get tired of coaching high school, call me. And I did. He had me down, and then he hired me. And it's been a ball. I've been there 19 years.
Which one recruited you harder? Was it Coach Chamberlain or Coach Kelly into that transition?
Coach Kelly is the one that I had talked to, and Coach Kelly was the head coach, and he had me down. And I got to know Rick after the fact, and then when Coach Kelly retired, Rick called me and said, "Hey, I want you to re-up." So I did that, and it's just been a phenomenal time there. The 19 years there, the quality of young man there is unbelievable. The respect they give you as a coach, it's just. I really believe that UD football it's kind of a nugget that people don't really know much about, and the quality of athlete and the quality of the PFL league that we're in is really outstanding.
Yeah. What positions did you coach, and what was your main function at UD?
That's a great story in itself. I had coached just about everything, offense, defense, almost everything. And Coach Kelly opened up the board that had the list of positions, and the only blank spot that wasn't filled was defensive tackles. And it's about the only thing I hadn't coached.
Yeah.
So he said, you think you can do this? And I said, yeah, I can do it. So he hired me. I coached defensive tackles for a while, and then I also took on the role of special teams coordinator. And I gave up defensive tackles about 2 years ago. The film work got to be just overwhelming, trying to do both, and just strictly did special teams at that point.
How do you? I got a quick football question, but special teams. You hear, big time coaches like Urban and Nick Saban talk about, offense, defense, special teams. And, not necessarily one in order of the other, depending on the coach, obviously. Urban, obviously, more of an offensive-minded, and Coach Saban, a defensive-minded coach. How important is special teams at the Division I level?
Coach Kelly and Coach Chamberlain, they sing about special teams all the time. Football is a field position game, and there's more yards exchanged during a special teams play than any other play.
Yeah.
It's 1 out of every 5 plays is a special teams play. So we treat it really highly and just as important as the other 2 phases of the games. And you can tell when teams don't, I think.
Yeah.
It comes back to haunt you.
Yeah, I would be curious to, you see all those stats, on CBS Sports or ESPN going through, but you really don't see that exchange of those yardage. You just see the punter punts at 40 yards, but you don't see necessarily how much the return was or if it was for a touchdown. Same thing on the kickoffs.
It's funny you said that, because I get so aggravated watching a football game, because I want to see it from behind and I want to see it from up top, just like they do offense and defense. But you're right.
Yeah.
You don't get to see much of it. But we had a young man named Shane Tobe on our team. And Dave Tobe, the special teams coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, supposed to be the guru of the NFL, had us out a couple times. So I got to learn a lot from him.
Yeah.
And we transferred it to UD, and it's been a lot of fun. Really good time.
What was the main, obviously going from high school to college, there would be a transition. What was it like going from being a high-profile high school coach where you were contending for state championships to being an assistant coach where obviously it's a different realm of responsibility?
Right. I'll tell you, I was very nervous about it. I didn't know how. I felt pretty confident about my abilities, but I had never coached college. And made it even worse was a guy named Joe Lombardi was the guy I was replacing, Vince Lombardi's grandson, who now is the quarterback coach for the Saints.
Okay.
Yeah, he's Drew Brees' coach. So I was a little nervous at how that would happen. But to answer your question, obviously, other than the difference in abilities of the athletes, I think you have more, as a coach, you have more influence on the kids at the high school level than you do at the college level. Those kids are grown and they have their own families, those types of things. But the transition was pretty easy, and I think it's kind of unique to University of Dayton. Those kids are just from top-notch families. They're smart, intelligent kids, and it was an easy transition for me. Time was more, believe it or not, even more than a head coach in high school. The time commitment is phenomenal. But we talked a little bit off camera about your recruiting at UD, and maybe from a
high school coach or a high school player that's out there right now, maybe listening, what are some things that they can do to, if they're interested in going to UD, or how do they get their name on the radar, if you will?
I think, first of all, sometimes that's overblown. I think if you're a good athlete, they'll find out about you.
Yeah.
You take St. Henry, for example, St. Henry in Ohio, they probably graduate 70 in each class, and they've had several NFL football players. They'll find you if you're good.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things is to go to the camps that various schools have. I think we were talking earlier, those camps, when I was in high school, I thought those camps were for kids to learn and be instructed, which they do. They go there for that. But more often than not, it's for those coaches to see you in person, your abilities. I know we send our coaches. Our coaches go out to those camps. They'll work the Ohio State camp. They'll work this camp and that camp to see the various athletes and then decide, okay, we might be able to get this guy. We're probably not going to get that guy. I mean, one great example from UD is we had a guy named Drew Fumagalli. We had his brother Ross Fumagalli, and they had a little brother. And we thought, boy, we'd like to have him, but we knew better. He went to Wisconsin, and now he plays for the Broncos. So, yes, Troy Fumagalli. So he came to all our games, and we were like, boy, we'd like to have him, but we knew we wouldn't be able to touch him.
So it kind of, once the selections start kind of tearing down from Division I, and everybody starts filling in their slots and make those commitments, then you kind of get where you guys are at.
Right.
But UD is a great academic school too, so I'm sure there's certain qualifications that qualify different too.
Exactly right. The guys that recruit down at UD, and there's 5 of them. They do a phenomenal job, and they're good at discerning who can we get, and then they have to look at money, and because we don't give scholarships at UD, not athletic scholarships, and we're competing with Division IIs that can, and NAIA schools that can, and so it's tough, and especially with the academic requirement that's at UD.
Yeah.
I'm getting distracted here by looking around and seeing the cheesesteaks and the pizzas coming out.
The beer's coming out.
Yeah, beer. It's dinner time here at Submarine House with a lot of sports on the TV. And I think this is fascinating because obviously here in the last day, Ohio State having a big coaching transition, and Ryan Day being an assistant, a major assistant, he's having a unique situation where he doesn't have to go to a smaller school and work his way up like Urban Meyer, Nick Saban. What do you think a transition like that, and being an assistant for 19 years at UD, which started at Division III and then went up to the reclassification of FCS?
Division I FCS, yes, non-scholarship.
What do you think, transition for either at that level or any level, an assistant suddenly becoming a head coach at a college level?
Well, I don't envy him, I'll be honest with you. I think if I've learned any rule in coaching, and that seems to hold true, is you don't follow a legend. And so if you just think about it, if he doesn't win the Michigan game next year, the fans are going to be restless. Yeah. If he doesn't win the Big Ten next year, the fans are going to be restless. So he's got his work cut out for him. I'm sure he's highly qualified and a great coach, or they wouldn't give the job to him. But he's going to have a
they always stay away from that first job after.
Be the second guy.
The second guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
But good for him, and I wish him the best, and I hope that he does.
Yeah, we do as well. Obviously, being in Ohio and being Ohio State fans, being from Ohio myself, I have to kind of kid everybody. I went to the real OSU, Oklahoma State, but that was for baseball. So I can get bragging rights in baseball. Definitely not football or basketball, but baseball maybe.
There you go.
Well, it's an interesting correlation. Ryan Day says he wants to recruit Ohio players. He wants to make that a priority. And at UD, you mentioned challenges as far as obviously being an FCS school, where after Ohio State, after the MAC schools and maybe some other schools, and then those are the athletes that UD goes after. But I imagine UD places an emphasis on the greater Miami Valley, and that just shows, because of the success UD's had long term, that shows the depth of talent that we have in this area for athletes, even at smaller schools.
Absolutely. This area is full of great football and great football players and athletes of all sports. And I know that the head coach takes this area. You know, Coach Chamberlain is the one who recruits this area, and Coach Kelly, when he was the coach, recruits this area. And we like to get, you know, we got some great leagues in this area. The MAC league up there and around St. Henry and those schools, and there, and down here with Centerville and Alter and all these schools. There's a lot of good football players. So we work hard here. We get a lot of kids from Pennsylvania, a lot of kids from Chicago area. So we get quite a few kids from the tri-state area, and it's a tough deal. We have 35 or so kids to every home game to just get a taste of what's going on, and then we whittle it down just like everybody else. But you know, Drake and Valparaiso and Butler, we're all recruiting the same kids. And it's a battle. You have to do a great job, and our guys do a great job.
So is typically at UD your roster very similar to a Division I, like Ohio State program? I know they have different scholarship requirements and all, or capabilities, but do you carry a similar roster with 80 to 100 kids?
We usually carry 110. 110
okay.
kids. Yep. And again, all non-scholarship kids, but we have 110. They try to bring in about 25 kids a year. We have a great graduation rate. We don't lose very many kids. They're there all 4 years.
Any kids that play other sports as well as football? I
know we haven't.
You haven't, okay.
No, we have not had any kids play multiple sports, no.
How do you feel about that as, talking to the other UD coaches and when you're recruiting about multi-sport athletes?
My guess would be it'd be so difficult to do because everything is so year-round in terms of training and things. It would be a real tough thing to do.
Yeah, I think that listening to a lot of different folks that have out there that have done the research. They talk about all these kids that play multi-sports, but I'm assuming that it's probably pre-high school when they do that, and then once they get to high school, they kind of shut it down to one sport.
Right. I think high schools have gotten, my term would be bad in that respect. I'm with you. I think if you can play multiple sports, you're going to be a great athlete. But everything is getting to select this, and it's getting down to wherever you have to pretty much choose if you want to be good at what you're doing.
And that's on the baseball angle, and I know we're going to have a baseball guest who will talk about this another time, but that's why there's so many Tommy John injuries with kids that they pitch year-round. They don't play like, when you were in high school, you played multiple sports.
Yeah.
And they don't play 3 sports, so they're pitching year-round. And then they go, get to the minor leagues, and then they need Tommy John surgery, and that's an epidemic right now.
Yeah, it's that is a whole conversation, and like you said, we're going to have some other folks that it's going to be specific on that. But I agree with Coach in the regards that kids should play multiple sports, and then at some point it is becoming so specialized. And I think now their rest period is when they go to their personal trainers.
Right.
And it's funny, we're laughing about it, but even for my kids, I've taken them to a gentleman that's right down the road from here at Submarine House, and he does a lot of non-weight lifting with them to show them proper technique, proper running form, proper jumping form, and all of the things. And it's very specific for an hour and 15 that we as parents we would love to show them and work with them, but it's like what you said, that's my kids off season, and then obviously during the season we're doing skill development and things like that, and playing games, of course, to take the test and then see how we grade and then reevaluate.
Right. It's becoming if you're going to get to the top of that sport, if that's your goal, you've got to hone in on that and specialize on that, which I think in some respects is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, I miss the days of, and you did the same thing at Brookville as well. And, we went from one sport to the other. We played football, and then we did basketball, and we worked in our weightlifting around that. And then we played baseball. And then during the summer, I was telling this story to, as a matter of fact, to a couple of my friends the other day. My summer was getting up and lifting 9 to 11, going to open basketball gyms from 12 to 2, and then playing baseball at night during the summer. And, get up, repeat, and do it again the next day.
Well, I don't know if he would admit it. If you ever have Jeff Graham on the program, Jeff came to us at the end of his junior year and talked about just concentrating on basketball. And we had to talk Jeff out of that. And I would imagine he's glad we did at this point because of what he went on and accomplished.
Jeff's very happy as well about that.
We were talking before the show that obviously we take, we all have our personal fan allegiances, and we work as professionals in sports. And but I've always been a lifelong Steelers fan. But what's interesting about that is I heard an interview with Jeff Graham saying he admitted that he never liked the Steelers growing up, and he didn't. Ideally, he would have been drafted by. That would have been like the last team he did. But as a professional, you get drafted. And obviously, there aren't too many athletes that have the opportunity to play any level of professional sports. So you go to the team. That's just like a lifelong Red Sox fan getting drafted by the Yankees. You go, you make your way up, and you gladly put on the pinstripes.
Well, you're fulfilling a dream, and as the rest of us have normal jobs, they're your boss as well, and they're signing your checks. So, and I'm sure Jeff had a couple good contracts if I remember right. So I'm sure he wasn't too bad about receiving that check from Mr. Rooney.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we're talking about obviously, you've worked with a lot of great athletes, and one thing we haven't talked about, people who are NFL fans know the coordinators, and you had been earlier in your career you coached Wink. Known as Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, and maybe you could briefly tell us about that because we're coming down to our final few minutes.
I met Donnie in school. He was a student, and he played baseball for me. He played second base, and he played football on the football team. He was a linebacker, a slow linebacker. But
I can't believe he played baseball. That's just making me.
Well, I spent hours trying to teach him how to hit, but it never worked. But after he graduated, he went to Defiance College, and then he got out of college, and he talked to me about he wanted to teach. He student taught at Brookville, and then I hired him for his first job, which was defensive coordinator, and he was there at Brookville for 2 years. And you could tell he's just great with people, real gift with people, and a good coach. And obviously he's hooked on, got to know the hardballs and hooked on, and is very successful today.
Yeah, I've got some stories, but I can't share the ones that he always, we always talked about. But there was nothing like being on offense because, obviously you called the plays for us on offense, and Donnie ran the defense. So I would every now and then go over to Donnie and his wife Laura's house from time to time. But yeah, some off-camera stories to be told there. But I do have one other thing for Coach Turner, because kind of to round it back. But we were talking, and you and who was the gentleman that you guys were thinking about doing the
Mark
same?
Ewald.
Yeah, Mark
Right.
Ewald. So what would you like to see out of this as far as like our show? And we want you to obviously come back and participate as many times as you want. We'd love to have you back.
I just think this is great, and covering high school sports and college, local colleges, those kinds of things. Because sometimes I just don't think it gets enough coverage. It doesn't get exposed. I think UD football. I mean, if you'd have come just about 6 years ago to watch the San Diego UD football game, you'd have watched Jim Harbaugh coaching. He was the coach at San Diego. It's a really good venue and great athletes and cheap, easy ticket.
Well, we appreciate everyone for tuning in today, and Coach Turner. Every guest gets a gift certificate or gift card from Submarine House. We appreciate you being on, and feel free to visit Dayton Sports Huddle The Dish on Facebook, and I know, Richie, you were excited about this, having your former coach on.
Very exciting, very great chance to talk to him again and see him and his family, and just again all the knowledge that and just as he said, the relationships that we formed through coaching. But especially I'm grateful to him and to his family, and it's great to see him again anytime.
I appreciate it, Richard.
Well, thank you, Coach Turner, and thanks everyone for tuning in to Dayton Sports Huddle the Dish. And come on down to Submarine House, and we'll see you next time.